There is something most people will never admit to themselves. Something uncomfortable. Something that sits quietly underneath every excuse, every postponed plan, every abandoned goal. And it is this. You are not tired, you are distracted, and those two things are not the same. They never were. Tiredness is earned. Tiredness is what happens after hours of concentrated, deliberate work. After building something that matters, after pushing through resistance over and over until the body finally surrenders and demands rest. That kind of tiredness is honorable. That kind of tiredness means something real happened. But the exhaustion most people feel, the kind that greets them before the day has even started, the kind that follows them from room to room, from task to task, from one open tab to the next, that is not tiredness. That is what a fractured, overstimulated, constantly interrupted mind feels like when it has been pulled in too many directions for too long. That is the cost of distraction, and very few people are willing to pay attention to it. Think about how an average day begins for most people. Before the feet even touch the floor, the phone is already in the hand. Before a single original thought has had the space to form, the mind is already absorbing someone else's opinions, someone else's news, someone else's curated version of a life. The morning, which should be a moment of stillness and intention, becomes instead a rapid, automatic, unconscious download of noise. And the noise never stops. It follows you to breakfast. It follows you into the car, through the earphones, across the desk. Notifications arrive every few minutes. Tiny interruptions dressed up as urgency. Each one asking for your attention. Each one training your brain to expect the next one. Each one pulling you slightly further away from any meaningful, sustained thought. Social media is perhaps the most powerful attention harvesting machine ever constructed. Not because it is evil, but because it was designed with extraordinary precision to make you stay. Every scroll, every like, every recommended video, every comment thread, every moment of passive consumption was engineered to feel satisfying just long enough to want more. The platform does not care what you accomplish today. It only cares that you return, and you do, again and again. Not because you choose to, but because the habit has become invisible. Here is what the research on the human brain tells us, and it is worth sitting with this for a moment. Every time your attention is interrupted, your brain requires time to fully return to the task it was doing before. That time is not seconds. In many cases, it is more than 20 minutes before deep concentration is re-established after a significant interruption. Now, consider how many times in a single day the average person is interrupted. By their phone, by a message, by a notification, by their own restless impulse to check something, anything, just to feel connected to something outside themselves. The mathematics of this is devastating. A person who checks their phone every 15 minutes, who responds to notifications as they arrive, who keeps multiple browser tabs open while attempting to work, that person is never actually working. Not in any meaningful sense. They are moving between fragments. They are giving 15% of themselves to a dozen different things, and wondering why nothing ever feels complete. And then they say, I am so tired. I worked all day and I have nothing to show for it. But they did not work all day. They reacted all day. And reacting is not the same as working. Reacting is not the same as building. Reacting is not the same as thinking. Reacting is the cheapest thing the mind can do, and it costs more energy than almost anything else. This is the quiet catastrophe of modern life. The exhaustion is real. The feeling is real, but the source of it is misunderstood. People believe they are depleted from effort, when in truth, they are depleted from fragmentation. The mind, when it is scattered, burns extraordinary amounts of energy doing almost nothing of consequence. It is like running a car engine at high speed while it is parked. The fuel disappears, the components wear down, and you have gone nowhere. Now consider the opposite. Consider what happens when a person works with genuine, undivided focus on a single meaningful task for even 90 uninterrupted minutes. Something different begins to occur. The mind enters a state that researchers sometimes call flow, a state in which thinking becomes cleaner, faster, and more effortless. Problems that seemed complicated begin to reveal their solutions. Words, ideas, plans, they emerge with a kind of natural ease that feels almost effortless, even though the work is difficult. And when that person finishes, they feel something the distracted person rarely feels. They feel satisfied, not because the work was easy, but because the work was real, because their attention was present for it. Clarity is not a luxury. Clarity is what happens when you protect your attention. The people who consistently produce meaningful work, who build things that last, who move through life with a kind of calm purposefulness that others find difficult to understand. Those people have not been given more hours in the day. They have not been given superior intelligence or better circumstances. What they have is a trained relationship with their own attention. They understand, at a deep and practical level, that focus is not something that happens to you. It is something you construct, deliberately, repeatedly, over time. They do not begin their mornings by handing their mind to the internet. They begin in silence, or in movement, or in the careful review of what matters most to them today. They have learned that the first hour of the day is not for consumption. It is for orientation. It is for deciding consciously what this day is going to be about. They do not work with their phone visible beside them, not because they lack the willpower to resist it, but because they understand that the mere presence of a device, even face down, even silent, reduces cognitive capacity. The research on this is not subtle. The phone does not need to ring to distract you. Its existence in your peripheral awareness is enough to occupy a portion of your attention. They know this. So, they remove it. Simply, practically, without drama. They work in silence, or with sound that does not compete for attention. They close the unnecessary tabs. They set a task and they begin it, and they do not leave it until either it is done or the allotted time has passed. This is not extraordinary discipline. This is just the application of understanding. Understanding what the mind actually needs in order to function at its highest level. They have also learned something that takes most people years to discover. Motivation is not something you wait for. Motivation is not a feeling that arrives and carries you. Motivation is a story people tell themselves to explain why they acted after they have already acted. The focused person does not wait to feel ready. They do not wait to feel inspired. They begin. And in the beginning, often the feeling follows. Discipline in this sense is not harshness toward yourself. Discipline is simply the decision to honor what you said you would do, even when the initial enthusiasm has faded. It is the understanding that every time you override the impulse to distract yourself, every time you return to the work when the mind wants to wander, you are strengthening something. You are building, slowly but with certainty, a more reliable version of yourself. This is the difference between the distracted person and the focused person, and it is worth examining carefully. The distracted person begins the morning without intention. They move from activity to activity as stimuli demand their attention. They start tasks and abandon them before completion, not from laziness exactly, but from a trained inability to sit with the discomfort of sustained effort. They consume enormous amounts of content every day and produce very little. At the end of the week, they feel behind. At the end of the month, they cannot clearly articulate what they accomplished. At the end of the year, there is a growing quiet desperation that something is wrong. Not with the world, but with them. And they are right. But the problem is not what they think it is. The focused person moves differently. They move more slowly in some ways. They are less reactive. They do not respond to every message immediately. They do not have an opinion on every conversation. They are not constantly performing busyness. They simply work. They work on the thing they decided matters. They work without announcing it. They work without seeking the approval of an audience. And they finish things. Not everything, but they finish the things they commit to. And that finishing, that consistent completion of meaningful effort, compounds over time in ways that are difficult to overstate. 6 months of focused, consistent daily work on a single meaningful project will produce more than 3 years of scattered, distracted, reactive effort. This is not a motivational statement. This is arithmetic. There is also something important to say about dopamine, because it sits at the center of this entire conversation. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter most associated with motivation, with the drive to pursue and to do. It is what makes action feel rewarding. The problem is that the modern digital environment has found ways to trigger dopamine releases with almost no effort required. A notification arrives, a small hit. A video autoplays. Another hit. Someone responds to a comment. Another hit. Each one small, but each one real. And the brain, which is a learning organ, begins to calibrate itself around these easy, effortless hits. It begins to find the more demanding, slower rewards of real work less appealing by comparison. What remains is presence. What remains is the capacity for genuine thought. What remains is the version of you that can actually work. And this is not something you achieve once. It is something you practice every day. Every hour that you choose to protect your attention is practice. Every morning that you begin without handing your mind to a screen is practice. Every time you close the irrelevant and open the necessary is practice. Every time you sit with a single task until it is done, rather than bouncing away from it the moment it becomes challenging, that is practice. Practice accumulates, and it accumulates in both directions. Because attention is not just a resource. Attention is, in the deepest sense, your life. What you pay attention to is what you experience. What you give your focus to is what grows. And what you allow to constantly interrupt that focus, that is what quietly erodes the life you are attempting to build. You are not tired. You are distracted. And now that you see it clearly, you have a choice to make. If this landed somewhere true for you, leave a comment below. I choose focus, not as a declaration to anyone else, but as a quiet, serious commitment to yourself. That is where it begins.